Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on the Fantasy Football Fix YouTube channel. In today's video, we've got my top transfer targets ahead of Game Week 29. Another double game week, but very interestingly, just before blank Game Week 30. So we do need to think about blank Game Week 30 when we make our transfers this week. If you are enjoying the content here on this channel, please make sure to drop a thumbs up on the video and also subscribe. And if you do enjoy any of the features that we use today, you can get all of them over at fantasyfootballfix.com. But without further ado, let's jump into today's video. So guys, we are going to start today with Bukayo Saka versus Dejan Kulusevski. Now, before we get into looking specifically at these two players, I do think if you're targeting players with your transfers this week and you are not planning to free hit in blank Game Week 30, I do think that Arsenal and Tottenham make the most sense to use your transfers on. The reason for that is that Arsenal and Tottenham are the only two teams to both double in the immediate Game Week 29 and also play in blank Game Week 30. And on top of that, both teams have pretty good fixtures from 31 onwards as well. So if you both want to attack double Game Week 29 and also cover blank Game Week 30, I do think it needs to be Arsenal or Tottenham that you're targeting. Of course, if you plan to free hit in Game Week 30, which I don't think is a terrible idea, I do think there will be better opportunities in the future, but it's not a terrible idea. Maybe if you've got 2 free hits, then maybe you don't need to worry about that. But even so, regardless, they've got a pretty nice double this week for both of them, so I definitely think they're worth targeting. The reason I chose both of these is they're both at really nice price points, around that sort of £6 to £6.5 million mark. And I just think that both have been performing very well recently, and as we'll discuss in a second, got decent underlying statistics as well. I've chosen Bukayo Saka over the likes of Martinelli, Smith Rowe, potentially Ødegaard, even Lacazette, I know in a slightly different position. The reason for that is, whilst, again, Lacazette and Martinelli even better statistics than Saka, whilst they've got good underlying statistics, the great thing about Saka is that he is so incredibly nailed, and he doesn't even tend to come off that early either. Lacazette and Martinelli are both prone to early substitutions, and when Smith Rowe is back and fit, there is definitely going to be rotation between Martinelli, Smith Rowe and Saka. Martinelli could go into that number 9 spot, which could result in Smith Rowe on the left, which means Lacazette's benched. It could be Smith Rowe coming in for Martinelli, and it'd be Martinelli and Lacazette playing. So it's very difficult to try and predict. So I just think with all of that in mind, considering he's not even that expensive, I think I would just prefer Saka out of all of those options. And of course, we've got Kulusevski here, the only real cheap option in that Tottenham team, but could be a fantastic option if you can't afford the likes of Son and Kane. With respect to the actual fixtures, I wouldn't say the double for either of them is that great, but there is still a decent double, and each of them have a decent fixture in there. Bukayo Saka, Leicester is the fixture that you really want in there. Leicester haven't been great defensively across the entirety of the season. Liverpool are still very, very good defensively, but they're not sort of to the extent of like a Manchester City, even Chelsea to some extent. They've got a slightly worse defence than that. So I would hope that Saka and Arsenal get a few chances in that sort of double game week, but I think the Leicester fixture is really the one that you're targeting. I would say Kulusevski's is a little bit of a mixed bag as well. So Brighton and Manchester United have both got decent defensive data across the season, but more recently have both been defending quite poorly. So Manchester United just concede chances. We can see it. You see it in the Manchester derby as well. They concede chances. There's mix-ups at the back almost every single game, we seem to say, at the likes of Lindelof and Maguire. And then Brighton, like I said, they've been good across the whole season, but more recently dropped off a little bit with their defensive data. So I don't think they're bad double game weeks, and a double game week is a double game week at the end of the day. You're sort of looking at, if they play both games, looking at a floor of about 3 or 4 points, which is definitely worth bringing the player in for. The fixtures outside of that, I actually probably just about prefer Kulusevski's fixtures. I really like that Game Week 31 fixture against Newcastle. Newcastle have actually been very, very good defensively, but whether that will continue, we'll have to wait and see. And then they've got Villa in 32, Brighton in 33, Brentford 34. I would say that, like I said, Arsenal's are slightly worse for me. Brighton in 32, Southampton 33, Man United 34. The one thing that would make me lean towards Saka, just looking at the fixtures before we move on to the underlying statistics, is that Arsenal have 2 fixtures to be rearranged. They have Tottenham and Chelsea. I know they're not great fixtures to be rearranged, but what that does mean is that Arsenal are very, very likely to have a fixture put into Game Week 33. So they could have a double game week of, say, Southampton away and Chelsea away. Because Tottenham only have 1 fixture to be rearranged, that fixture is more likely to go into Game Week 36. So it looks like, at the moment anyway, what the Premier League do, we don't know. It looks more likely that Arsenal will have a double game week of Southampton and Chelsea in Game Week 33, and Tottenham will have a double game week in 36, and that will also be a double game week for Arsenal. So essentially, with the Arsenal players, you're also getting maybe a double game week in 33. So all of that put together, let's take a look at the underlying statistics. So of course, Saka's played almost 2,000 minutes, whereas Kulusevski's only played 334. but their underlying statistics are scarily similar. I had to double check I wasn't looking at the same underlying statistics for each one. So projected points, Saka is projected to get more points over the next 6 game weeks. The main reason for that is he's got slightly better underlines, but also he'll play 90 minutes every game, whereas Kulusevski could, number one, come off early for the likes of Mora or Bergwijn, or he could just maybe not start every game. So that's why Saka is projected to get just over 8 expected FPL points more over the next 6 game weeks. Expected FPL points per 90 across the season thus far. Bukayo Saka at 4.99, very impressive. Kulusevski just behind at 4.89. If we then look at their non-penalty expected goal involvement, it's identical. 0.45 for Saka, 0.45 for Kulusevski. So really, really good for both of them, I'd say, at that sort of 6.5, £6.1 million price tag for Kulusevski. Anything in and around 0.5 at that sort of price, I would be very, very happy with. And I think you sort of expect them to consistently tick along. And both of them just look really good as well. So for those of you that aren't massive on your underlying statistics, they both are passing the eye test massively as well. Big chances, again, very similar. Kulusevski just edging it in comparison to Saka. And then touches in the box, both very impressive. 6.76 touches in the box per 90 for Saka, 6.20 for Kulusevski. So incredibly similar underlying statistics for them. And if you look at the touch maps, obviously Kulusevski's isn't as developed because he hasn't played as many minutes, but they're almost in identical positions. They've got almost identical underlying statistics. So realistically, it comes down to who you fancy. And for me, I'm looking to get both of these into my side. So I already own Bukayo Saka, and I'm looking to bring in Kulusevski. If Bowen is out for game week 29, Kulusevski in for Bowen looks like a very, very nice move. Alternatively, Kulusevski in for any other single game week player, maybe someone that doesn't play in blank game week 30. You could be getting 2 extra fixtures in 2 game weeks. So I really like both of them. Let me know down below who you like. As I said, if you don't want to go for Saka, you don't quite have the money, Martinelli is a fantastic option. I've got his underlying statistics in front of me. He's actually got 0.55 non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90. So if you really don't want to go to Saka, you don't have the price, Martinelli's a great option. You could even double up with Martinelli. The only thing is that's his per 90 statistics, and Martinelli doesn't tend to get 90 minutes. He'll tend to get subbed off early. And like I said, when Smith Rowe is back, there could be a bit of rotation. So if I had to decide which one to bring in out of Saka and Kulusevski, I would lean towards Saka, more nailed, more likely to see out 90 minutes. And when you take that into account, I would say that Saka's underlying statistics are definitely better for me. But like I said, let me know down below, Saka, Kulusevski, or both. So, of course, Kulusevski is a fantastic option, but if you can stretch to Son and Kane, you're going to want to do so. And I thought what I would do here is just compare the two of them, just in case you are looking to either wildcard in game week 29 and choose between the two of them, or potentially you've got maybe like 2 free transfers, bit of money in the bank, and you know you can get Son or Kane, and you just want to decide which one to bring in. We did discuss this previously. I think the first thing to note is obviously they're in different positions and at different prices. So with Son, you are saving quite a bit on top of Kane. So that's one major advantage for Son over Kane. But what I like about Kane is that there just aren't many good strikers in the game at the moment, and I would struggle to name maybe 4 or 5 strikers that I would genuinely want in my team. Whereas in midfield, there are so many options. I could name maybe 15 or 20 players that I'd want for the back end of the season. So that might make you maybe want to lean towards Harry Kane there. We've discussed the fixtures already. We know they're fantastic. We know also the best thing about Spurs' fixtures is they do play, they double in 29 and they play in blank game week 30. With Son and Kane, maybe even more so than Kulusevski, I would argue that they're maybe the standout captaincy options in blank game week 30 as well if you're not looking to free hit. So that's even more reason to potentially look to bring in either Son or Kane. You could even potentially captain them in 31, but of course Salah plays against Watford, so you're probably going to lean towards captaining him. They've also got the one fixture to be rearranged, as I spoke about with Kulusevski as well against Arsenal, which is likely to be in game week 36. So if we look at the underlying statistics, what I've decided to do for Son and Kane is I've decided to look since game week 24. The reason for that is across the season, there's obviously been changes in management. There's also been changes in tactics more recently. And in game week 24, Kulusevski came into the team. So I thought it would be interesting to see how they look under Conte in more recent weeks. And also since Kulusevski's come into the team, have there been changes in the way Son and Kane play? To be honest, they track very similarly to the rest of the season. So if you look at the entirety of the season, or you look over this last sort of like 6 or 7 game weeks, they're very similar between the two. Obviously, we don't know what has happened in game week 28. At the time of recording, I'm recording this, of course, before the Everton game. So this might completely shift their underlying statistics, but we'll have to wait and see for that. So since game week 24, they've both started every single game. Son has seen slightly less minutes than Kane. He's slightly more prone to an early substitution, but I wouldn't say it's enough to make you worry. Only 13 minutes less across the last sort of 6-7 game weeks. Projected points from game week 29 to game week 34. The Fantasy Football Fix algorithm actually projects Son to get more points than Kane. The main reason for that is, of course, extra point for a goal, extra point for a clean sheet as well. because the underlying statistics don't necessarily suggest that Son is the standout option there. So that's the main reason for Son projected to get more points over Kane. When we look at expected FPL points since game week 24, Kane just about edges Heung-min Son at 5.89, but Son's is 5.59. Both of those are pretty good. You probably wouldn't say that that's worth the price tag. When you look at Saka and Kulusevski, they're probably only one expected FPL point lower than Son and Kane there. And then non-penalty expected goals and expected assists per 90. Kane is at 0.78, which is very good. And then Son is at 0.68, which again is pretty good for 10.8 million. Of course, Kane is on penalty. So when you add penalties into that, it could even be higher if they'd have got 1 or 2 penalties. You might be sort of starting to approach 0.8, 0.9, which is very, very impressive. You're approaching Salah and Mane levels there. So both very impressive underlying statistics since game week 24. Across the entirety of the season, Kane is still coming out on top in comparison to Son, but it is slightly lower and the gap is slightly smaller. So what I would say is that across the entirety of the season, I should say, they're fairly close, whereas more recently, Kane has just taken the lead. And I think the eye test backs that up. Kane has looked fantastic recently. Big chances per 90 since game week 24. Kane is getting a big chance every 90 minutes, which is highly impressive. Son is getting 0.62 per 90. So again, close, but Kane is definitely getting the clear-cut opportunities, and that's what you want, especially if you're looking for a captaincy option. You don't want to rely on Son's fantastic finishing or a big chance created. You would rather them have the big chance themselves to finish. And then touches in the box, again, very similar between the two. 4.74 for Son, 4.60 for Harry Kane. So for me, there's not enough of a difference between the two to make me say you should break your back to get in one over the other. What I would do is, number one, trust your gut feeling. Whichever your gut feeling is saying, go for them, because the statistics are fairly close between the two. And also maybe just whichever's easiest to get. So for me, to get Harry Kane in, it would mean removing someone like Lacazette. It would mean removing Bowen and also another player for a -8, whereas I might be able to get Son in a little bit more easily. So if you're in a position where you can get Son for maybe a -4 and you don't have to sort of destroy the structure of your team, whereas Kane requires a -8 and a massive restructure, I don't know that the underlying statistics at least suggest that Kane is that much of a better option. For me though, if you had sort of free range to choose, maybe you're on a game week 29 wildcard, I would definitely favour Harry Kane for me. Underlying statistics are slightly better. He's on penalties and he's projected to get slightly more minutes than Son over the next sort of 6-7 game weeks. So that's my opinion. Let me know down below. You team Son or you team Kane? Are you looking to bring either of them in, or do you potentially own both already? If you do own both already, you've got great options for 29 and also great options for captaincy in blank game week 30. So just to finish off, whilst they don't play in blank game week 30, I thought I'd have a bit of a discussion around Andrew Robertson and Reece James. I think pretty much everyone in the game owns Trent Alexander-Arnold, or at least most people. And if you don't own him at this stage, there might be a reason that you don't own him and you might still be looking elsewhere. But it's interesting to decide, do you double up with Trent with Robertson? Do you potentially go Trent and Reece James? Or do you go Trent, Robertson and Reece James and just go really big at the back? Big at the back tends to crop up maybe 3 or 4 times a season. It's usually at the start of the season. People are like, I'm going to go big at the back. Lots of really good value in defenders this year. Then it starts to drop off. Then it picks back up mid-season. Then sort of picks up again at the end of the season as well. And I think we're at that stage now where people are starting to consider you could have a back 4 of Trent, Robertson, Cancelo and Reece James, and it could look really good. So I just wanted to look at the underlying statistics between these two and see, is it worth paying the extra about 0.9 million that you get for Robertson on top of Reece James, or is it just worth going for Reece James, maybe selling Robertson down to a cheaper player and putting some of the money into your attack? So the fixtures for the two of them, of course, Liverpool also have a double game week this week, and I think it's pretty good from a defensive perspective. Brighton's a really nice fixture, and whilst Arsenal are pretty decent going forward, like I said, Saka, Lacazette, Martinelli have been in good form, I wouldn't put it past Liverpool keeping a clean sheet there. So it's a really nice double. They then, of course, blank in game week 30, but straight after game week 30, if you can get through that blank with Liverpool players in your team, they've got Watford at home, which looks like a great fixture from a defensive perspective again. Then Manchester City in 31. They've then got Villa in 33 and Everton in 34. So not bad fixtures for Liverpool. I would argue that Chelsea's fixtures are better, but of course they don't double in 29. So Reece James and Chelsea only have Newcastle at home in game week 29. Not a bad fixture, but Newcastle have looked a little bit better recently. So I still wouldn't mind. I've got Reece James in my team. I'm perfectly happy keeping him for game week 29 and starting him. They then blank in 30. And then it's Brentford, Southampton, Leeds, West Ham. So if you don't take into account the extra fixture that Liverpool get, it's definitely Reece James and Chelsea for me if you're looking at the fixtures. But of course, that extra fixture does make a difference. So it's up to you how much you value that extra fixture. I would say they're fairly similar then, the fixtures across the next 6 game weeks. If we take a look at the underlying statistics, there is a clear winner, and his underlying statistics are absolutely ridiculous. So, of course, Robertson has played more minutes. He's played 1,757 minutes, whereas Reece James has only played 1,185 minutes. Still played a fair amount, though. Some people seem to think Reece James has got a really small sample size and hasn't played that many minutes. He's played well over 1,000. Projected points over the next 6 game weeks, Robertson comes out on top at 28.2. The main reason for that is he gets an extra fixture in there. But if you consider that the extra fixture might be considered maybe Manchester City, or if it is just the Arsenal fixture added in there in Game Week 29, the extra fixture is not that fantastic. And Reece James actually tracks quite closely to Robertson at 25.8 projected points. Expected FPL points per 90, both of these two are very good. 6.35 for Robertson is very good. That's basically appearance points and clean sheet every single game for expected FPL points, which is brilliant. If you could get a clean sheet from a player every single game, you're looking at over 200 points across the season. Expected FPL points per 90 for Reece James, though, we're looking at 8.28, which is just remarkable. Again, there you're looking at appearance points, clean sheet, and pretty much almost an assist on top of that. Looking at a 9-pointer almost expected FPL points every single game, which is just remarkable for a defender. When we look at non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90, Robertson's 0.25 is good, not great. It's better than most defenders in the league, but it's nowhere near as good as the likes of Trent. As we can see here, it's nowhere near as good as the likes of Reece James as well. So 0.25, I'm not knocking that at all. That's very good. You're looking at an expected goal involvement every 4 games from a defender. But when he's 7.2 million, I'd maybe want to see that a little bit higher from Robertson. And again, when we look at Reece James, 0.45 non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 is absolutely ridiculous. Again, that's almost an expected goal involvement every 2 games if he plays 90 minutes. If you look back to Saka and Kulusevski, if your memories are that good, Reece James has exactly the same expected goal involvement per 90 as Saka and Kulusevski, in addition to the fact he also has clean sheets and in addition to the fact that he gets extra points for goals. So they're remarkable statistics there for Reece James. The only thing that I would like to know at this point is these are per 90 statistics. And Reece James, number 1, doesn't always see out 90 minutes. And number 2, doesn't start every game and will not start every game. You've got Callum Hudson-Odoi can play at right wing back and Azpilicueta can play at right wing back. And to some extent, you could potentially see someone like Pulisic play there. However, Hudson-Odoi and Azpilicueta are currently injured. I don't know the extent to these injuries at the time of recording, but you would expect Reece James to play the majority of the minutes. And with those underlying statistics, if he does miss the odd game, it might still be worth it. Big chances per 90. Robertson's quite poor, actually. So most of Robertson's underlying statistics comes from creativity. So he only actually gets 0.05 big chances per 90. Reece James is getting 0.23 big chances per 90, which once again is the same as Bukayo Saka, I believe it was. So really good big chances per 90 there for Reece James, getting a big chance every 4 games from right wing back. And then touches in the box, Robertson actually comes out on top here at 3.84 versus Reece James's 3.49. And then you can see the 2 touch maps alongside me. They're fairly similar. I would say that Robertson's touches tend to be a little bit wider. He gets into that perfect opportunity to cross. Whereas when Reece James gets into the box, it's normally in a shooting position. You can see it slightly more central. So this is to basically say both of these are fantastic options, right? I'm not going to knock either of them. But Reece James is putting up truly frightening statistics across this season thus far. On top of seeing what he can do in one game, he's got a 21-pointer, a 13-pointer. He got an 18-pointer in Game Week 28. Even the fact that he doesn't have a double Game Week in 29 and he doesn't play in blank Game Week 30, I do think that maybe getting Reece James in sooner rather than later is worth it. He's just going to continue to go up in price, and assuming he stays fit, he could end up like 7 million by the end of the season. And if you can get him in now for Newcastle when you expect him to play, that's a decent fixture. Or potentially you could wait until Game Week 31 and then just get him in for Brentford, Southampton, Leeds and West Ham. As I said, there's a reasonable chance that Reece James has a double game week in Game Week 33 of Leeds away and Arsenal at home. Now, we don't know that. That's not confirmed. That's just sort of hypothesizing based on the fixtures to be rearranged. But that's definitely a possibility that that game goes into Game Week 33. So let me know down below. Are you going big at the back? Are you having the likes of Trent, Robertson, Reece James and Cancelo? Or are you just going to choose one of the two? I think if I were on a wild card right now, I would definitely have Trent. I would definitely have Reece James. And then I might end up just going for Rudiger over Robertson. Or maybe even Van Dijk just to cover that clean sheet. I don't know, looking at those underlying statistics, that it's worth going for Robertson over James, and I don't even know if it's worth going for Robertson over Van Dijk, because Van Dijk's got quite a lot of goal threat as well. But do let me know down below. Maybe I'm being a little bit hard for Robertson here, but I'm always interested to hear your thoughts. So guys, there you have it. Those are my Game Week 29 top transfer targets. As always, there are a lot more players that we could have put in here, but I do think the key thing is that you want to try and attack double Game Week 29 as much as you possibly can. But unless you're free hitting in Game Week 30, you also probably want to cover Game Week 30 with your transfers as well. So I do think that Tottenham and Arsenal players are probably going to be the priority this week. If you're enjoying the content here on this channel, please do remember to like, comment, and subscribe. As I always say, those 3 things are completely free for you guys to do, but massively help support the channel. And if you like any of the features that we use in these videos, such as the fixture analyzer, such as the stats that we use, maybe the touch maps are your favorite thing, you can get all of those features over at fantasyfootballfix.com. So do head over there, try out all of the features for yourself. You can get some free trials, and you can also get the paid for version if you do want to get any of the premium features. Until next time, guys, thank you so much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.